Eugene asks Sir Ro, Melkith isn't done yet. Sir Ro said no because, if the woman was done with her business then she would be proud of her new abilities, but since there was no news from Melkith by now Sir Ro knew that the woman must be having a hard time getting the contract underway. Meanwhile at the top of the White Tower, Melkith was still pointing its sword to the sky, with sad and hopeful eyes. Melkith stood on the highest floor of the tower facing the storm that went at the created. This woman had sent a message but there was no response, so she cursed in her heart. She swore tempest because the message she sent to the elemental world went unanswered, even though she deliberately did not warm her body so that her body's sensitivity was maximized, so she was forced to not wear clothes, once again. Melkith tried to summon the Tempest King of Wind to make a contract with, but what appeared instead was a plenty bird with a sparkling body full of lightning. It was the elemental king of lightning, Levin. Melkith was surprised to see Levin, who suddenly appeared in front of her. Even though she was not called, this elemental creature had brought a message from Tempest to tell Melkith to shut up, because Tempest didn't want to enter into a contract with Melkith. She's realizing Tempest heard her. Melkith stirred up even more. She shouted, even louder, and said that he was the greatest elemental in the world and the only person who could form a contract with the King of Wind. So Melkith asked the Lord of the Storms to appear because this woman promised to give him whatever he wanted. When Levin asked her to have a bit of embarrassment, Melkith shouted, even louder, for Tempest to get out. Tired of Melkith's attitude, Levin finally decided to strike the woman with his lightning bolt until Melkith fainted. She was at this point that Levin said that Melkith were not be able to give Tempest what he wanted, because the hurricane wants to go to the north, a place where the demon realm cannot be conquered, a waste that has not been forgotten for several centuries. After seeing that Levin left the White Tower, this is where Melkith is now putting a languid, gloomy and full of wrinkled face in front of Eugene. This young man just knew there was someone who could age this fast in 10 days. Eugene tries to ask Melkith what's wrong with the contract. Instantly Melkith's face became even scarier when he swore at Eugene, who must have known the answer from Melkith's current expression. After being asked by Eugene, Melkith got even more irritated. She kept swearing, while jumping to chair. Mel, who saw this, could not let it go anymore. The little girl came down and asked, "Lady pissed her pant to be quiet." Instantly Melkith is screamed even louder because of embarrassment. Eugene, who heard Melkith scream, could only cover his ears while saying, "It was very noisy." Eugene then remembers something and asks if Tempest really refused or was he just telling lie. Melkith screamed again, while answering, "Why did she have to lie eventually?" Eugene says that if Melkith had waited for 10 days and it would have been 10 years in total, but Eugene will be generous and count only 9 years, if Melkith returns with now. So with trembling hands Melkith finally returned to Wined before leaving. This woman advised Eugene into good care of the Cape of Darkness. After Melkith left, Eugene was busy reading again in one of Aki Yan's rooms. He reads the story of the chief of giant Camus, whose size is beyond reason, hundreds of years old. Camus is the strongest chief in the history of giant, thousands of humans against hundreds of giants. Do you think the numbers are too few? There was nothing the giants could do. Will the audience have the courage to stand their ground against the giants? But the number of soldiers is not important because there's Vermouth in there. The arrogant knights who thought themselves superior to the others came to Vermouth and said that they were from the Rose Knights. The leader said he would fight with Vermouth. However, Vermouth did not respond to the knight leader's words, because he doesn't like fighting on groups. Only one person can fight by his side, and he can also be relied on by Vermouth, and that young man is Hamel. When Vermouth said to take care of the monster's left arm, but Hamel replied that he likes right arms because the giant is right-handed, Vermouth agreed, and let him. We'll take the monster's right arm, which was 100 times the size of the two of them. Only the holy sword can stop Camus' poisonous breath, which was strengthened by the Demon King's power. The legendary sword only recognizes Vermouth as its owner, so with this, Vermouth is the only one who can kill Camus. Finally Camus' head was cut off and a lot of blood was spurting out. But the giants did not back down, but the protection of the demon king that disturbed humans began to weaken with the death of Kamush. It was finally at this moment that the charming Xenia was able to show what she was capable of. At this point Eugene asks, if the author of this book Madame Xenia, Mel who is by his side was dumbfounded hearing that, because Eugene was surprised to see the amount of praise for Xenia in the book he was reading. Mel took it as a mockery of Xenia, because no one can praise himself when writing a story. Even if it was Eugene, he would not spare when Eugene made fun of Xenia. After finishing reading the book, Eugene stepped outside. Mel follows and asks where he is going. Eugene replied, he wanted to try witchcraft again. Mel thought it was good, but she thought Eugene was arrogant because at his current level, he still couldn't try the method of witchcraft. Eugene replied with a smile that, it would be more satisfying to pull off a difficult challenge. During the 10 days after the Black Lion Knight's departure, Eugene spent most of his time in Acrayan. In his mind, this young man realized that he couldn't replicate the eternal whole yet, but at least, he has to reach 9 circles first. According to Eugene, an eternal whole is simply a massive circle that holds other circles that keep increasing until there is nothing left. The user can spin the circle, destroy it and then regenerate it to increase its mana capacity, but Eugene doesn't use a circle when using magic. He rotated the stars from the white flame method to create new circles, instead of the original ones. Eugene hopes to add just 1 circle in the eternal whole, what Hamel learned in his previous life for cheap mana training methods used by low-level warriors. Hamel supplemented the method with his experience and assisted Xenia in repairing it. That was how Hamel first learned his own mana training method, growing the core then detonating the mana that made up the core continuously deploy the mana that has been accelerated by the explosion. With that Hamel slashed Camus's arms and legs. In the past Vermouth praised Hamel as a talented figure in battle, but Xenia called his mana method trash. But with that Hamel had managed to reach such a high level. Now, Eugene was standing in front of the eternal whole and he didn't faint anymore. He saw the circle that was regenerating continuously, as well as the massive circle that was shading them. Now, Eugene can even see the movement of the mana in it now. Eugene sure he can do it. Not only is Hamel but also Eugene Lionheart. He was confident that he could replicate the eternal whole using the white flame method. Until finally, 2 years passed and Eugene had his 19th birthday. He is writing something. Mel, who faithfully accompanies him to study, Mel tried to offer lunch, but Eugene only answered in a moment. If he stopped now, then he would lose focus on writing. Seeing this, Mel asked why Eugene was in such a hurry and writing his thesis. Mel thinks it's best to write slowly, so there are no mistakes. Eugene replies that he's in no rush. Mel said that usually wizards complete their thesis on witchcraft in decades. This time Eugene replied that it didn't take him that long to understand witchcraft. Mel was annoyed to hear Eugene's answer. She thinks Eugene is so arrogant because he managed to write his first thesis. Mel advised the young man to stop and study magic a little longer. Seeing that his interlocutor, Mel, was starting to get annoyed, she reminds Eugene not to cross the line by calling him that, especially considering that he is 200 years older than you. Eugene immediately issued his flagship move by calling Shy Grandma. Instantly Mel's face was red with anger. Eugene changed the subject and asked if Mel didn't want him to leave. Immediately to this question, Mel paused and looked away. Eugene adds that he's been coming and going for 2 years, but he realized that he was the only one who came to that floor every day. Mel replied that the other witness had seen the witchcraft a long time ago, so they were amazed and started to analyze it. In the end they all failed and chose to focus on completing their magic, but Eugene has been coming to Akron every day for the past 2 years and is trying to understand witchcraft. Mel also asked if Eugene would leave Arod after his thesis was finished. Eugene answered with the question, what else could he do in that place? Mel replies, Eugene can do anything. It's not certain when Sarah will retire. If Eugene asks, she will appoint Eugene as his successor. Eugene replies, he doesn't want to be at Red Tower Master. Mel asks, What if Eugene becomes a court mage because their captain triple wizard or wants to recruit Eugene? The white-haired youth replied the captain was too friendly and he didn't like that. Mel reminds him that the prince also likes Eugene. This kid thought, if Eugene worked for him then he could brag about it for decades to come. Eugene appreciated that, but he wasn't in the mood. Mel had said that Eugene couldn't possibly be the head of the family, so why to return to the Lionheart family? Eugene replies, he doesn't need a reason to come home. Mel says that what Eugene has accomplished over the past few years is extraordinary. Even in the half year that Eugene had written his thesis, he had managed to simplify a complex magic theory as well as increasing the process. Eugene answered the thesis only for his pleasure. After all, only Eugene could use that technique. Eugene wrote it only to regulate his magic. He didn't want to show his thesis to the academy or the association, because there will be no magician who can use the circle flame method. Sir Ro once said that, aside from understanding magic, this is specifically impossible because Eugene doesn't use the usual circle method. Eugene replaced the white flame method star with a circle, but that doesn't mean that other white flame methods can replicate it. Sir Ro not even tried Eugene's technique, according to his thesis, but he failed from the start. He had never made cores or studied white flames, so he replaced it with a circle, but her mana ended up upside down instead. Now Eugene has become a 4-star white flame method user. Not only that, but Eugene also managed to add an eternal hole to his circle, crafting a ring with 4 stars, then exploding the mana, and it continuously is handled in the ring. What was constantly rotating ensured that his mana would not flow outside the circle. That's a new method called circle. At first, Eugene wanted to try that when he reads 5 stars, but after seeing the witchcraft he changed his mind. Eugene spent quite a bit of time on the 6th floor, Hall of Space, and on the 8th floor, a Hall of Intense Heat. This 8th floor houses the magic book belonging to the strongest fire mage in the world. And Eugene needs to learn space magic, so he can control his cloak properly. Sir Ro made Eugene his apprentice to help check and revise his thesis. Sir Ro also helped Eugene refine a basic circle magic spell to implement into his circle, a flame method. This young man spent half his time in Acrayon and the other half to learn magic from Sir Ro. These 2 years were exhausting. Eugene asked Mel. She is mad because the boy asked to leave even though she didn't want Eugene to go. Mel replies that she is not angry and she has no right to stop Eugene from leaving. Mel says, Eugene can leave anytime if that's what he wants. Mel had no desire to go anywhere, but even if she wanted to go, she couldn't, so she told Eugene to just go away and leave himself alone in that lonely and boring place. Mel says, she wouldn't be sad at all if she had to say goodbye to Eugene after spending so many years with him, because Mel is not a living human, and she understands that humans always do whatever they want. Stuffing the paper into his robes, Eugene asks, is that the case? Mel confirmed that, because she had lived 200 years before Eugene, so she was used to goodbyes, but at least she asked Eugene to inform herself before the young man was going to leave. So Mel requested that Eugene not leave her without saying a word like Madame Sienna. Eugene also agreed to it. Mel is annoyed because he has poured out his heart, but Eugene is still cold, so Mel uses Eugene of being a disgusting man. As Eugene started to walk out of the room, Mel kept insisting on calling the boy a disgusting man. Mel says she hates Eugene. According to her, Eugene is still a child but does not respect older people. Suddenly Mel's tone dropped when she said she would be confused if Eugene suddenly wanted to stay at Arrote because of her. Mel explains that her personality is based on Madame Sienna when she was young, so her feelings and attitude are still childish. They'll realize that sometimes she said inappropriate things and sounded stubborn, which he also felt stupid for saying all that. She thought Madame Sienna wouldn't act like that, so Mel felt like she was insulting Madame Sienna with her current attitude. Eugene this time with a sweet smile, when he said that the real Madame Sienna would also act exactly like. Of course Mel didn't believe that. She was sure that Madame Sienna would not act stupid. They'll blame Eugene for being so suspicious of her Madame Sienna. but with a big smile Eugene replied that he believed it. Mel asks if Eugene thinks like that, after reading a picture book written based on someone's imagination, but the girl had not finished speaking. Eugene interrupted her by saying that the young man's thesis would be finished soon. If he's not too mainstream, then he could finish before the summer, so he was going to visit Mel before he left and he was going to tell her something at that time. Mel scowled at Eugene's words. She asked in a harsh tone if Eugene would laugh at her at that moment. Eugene just smiled very sweetly, then turned around and said he would tell everything in time. The story continues with the captain of the triple wizard, or greeting him kindly as soon as Eugene comes out of the library, but Eugene's face immediately turned gloomy, seeing this man with a thin mustache in front of him, because he already knew what the captain would say. Captain Trumpel said again that the vacant position previously Austin is currently vacant, so if Eugene changes his mind at any moment, he can still fill in, but Eugene insists he doesn't want the position. Then Captain Triple asked how is the progress of his dissertation or thesis. If Eugene wanted, Captain Tremple could help him with that. Of course, the captain knew that Eugene's mento, the Red Tower Master, had already reviewed the thesis, but considering that the Red Tower Master was only an expert in summoning magic, the captain, who was also an expert in combat magic, offered to help check it out, but Eugene rejected the offer. Because Captain Tremple would not understand the topic being discussed. Inside his heart, the captain was grumbling because, all this time Eugene only showed the results of his thesis to the Red Tower Master and hid it so well. Captain could only smile awkwardly as he asked if he could tell about the thesis. That was because he was also used to teaching other people. Eugene only thanks him for the offer, but he's fine. Eugene is worried that, if he accepts Captain offer, it will offend Sero. Captain was still trying to persuade the young man in front of him by saying it would be a private secret between the two of them, but Eugene didn't respond and immediately turned around and walked away saying goodbye. This young man walked dejectedly down the hall. Eugene is worried that Captain will get even angrier if he finds out that he has made an eternal hole. He was worried that Captain Tremple would crawl into his bedroom to urge him on. Because the circle flame method is not too different from the white flame method, when casting spells not even a great wizard like Captain Trimple would be able to see the difference. Eugene smiled happily at the thought that he could hide his ability from a high-level mages. It felt completely satisfying, and Eugene's heart the gunshot dust after the explosion filled Eugene's private practice room. Again, Sir Ro, who was watching him practice, commented that he was setting aside the number of magic spells that could be cast. If you only judge from his strength, Eugene seems to be above 5 circles. Eugene answered for circles as the current limit. Advanced level magic couldn't survive in the eternal hole. Eugene asked his teacher, was his understanding still lacking? Sir Ro said it was not, so simply put it as reached its max. Don't limit. Eugene has not succeeded in perfectly imitating the eternal hole with the circle flame method. Because Eugene replaced the circle with his core up to 4 stars of the white flame method, and 4 cores, it would be more accurate to view it as the number of cores equal to the number of circles. In simple terms, every time the white flame method increases, Eugene's circle method will also increase. But Sir Ro asked Eugene to be careful because the current circle flame method doesn't have any weaknesses. The risk would probably increase each time Eugene leveled up, because this man used his magic high. Sir Ro again explained that the circle frame method is not the same as the usual circle method, because this method allows using to advanced magic and he can use 5 circle magic easily, but don't try 6 circle magic because they still don't know what danger will come when Eugene uses magic that has never been used before. Eugene replied that he understood that. Sir Ro asked if you generally wouldn't return to the Lionheart family immediately after he finished his thesis. Sir Ro also asked where Eugene would go. Eugene answered he want to try Luhar Kingdom's famous ice crab. Within his mind, this young man remembered that Luhar was a country founded by Moran. Sir Ro was, of course, surprised to hear that Eugene wanted to go all the way to Luhar just to eat ice crab, considering there are many ice crab restaurants in Arod. Eugene countered this by saying that eating at his place would be better. Eugene said again that after eating ice crab at Lionheart, he wanted to go to the MANHUA. He reasoned that the scorpion cactus over there was delicious, though in his heart, Eugene wanted to find Anis, who had become a saint in the Holy Empire Euros, but 200 years ago she decided to travel without telling the purpose to the emperor, and she was last seen in the middle of MANHUA desert. Sir Rose said that he had not expected Eugene to like that kind of food, so he invited Eugene to have lunch at a restaurant that provides seafood, but when they arrived at the restaurant, Eugene's face suddenly turned sullen. When Prince Huan appeared before him, this young man did not expect to meet the prince at the restaurant. First, Prince Huan apologized for interrupting their lunch, but he will get to the point. Prince Huan asks Eugene to stay in Arot. He will be promised the position of captain of the castle's mage troop of wizards. The prince even sworn his name. Eugene replies that it will be hard to do, but the prince convinced the young man because he would become king of Arot in 10 years. Instantly, Sir Ro was shocked to hear the prince's words, this which said that the prince's words were very dangerous, considering the current king was still very healthy. Prince Honing asked Sir Ro not to misunderstand because he had been promised the throne for a long time. The inheritance right almost certainly belonged to the prince, and the people of Arot also believed that he would be the next king. The castle's army of magicians was under the command of the king, of course, out of respect for the Senate. The prince had to go through some process, but Eugene would be worthy of that position in 10 years. Eugene replied calmly that he was grateful because the prince's evaluation was so high on him, but Eugene didn't know how far his progress would be. The prince said it was because Eugene and Red Tower Master managed to hide his progress so well, even they wouldn't want to tell the prince. Why? So he could only guess from behind his glasses. The prince saw Eugene's body filled with mana. Just seeing that, the prince was able to conclude that this young man in front of him had probably reached the 5th circle level, so the prince asked if Eugene managed to understand witchcraft. Eugene asks if he needs to answer that. However, with a smile on the prince's face, he said that by answering like that, he had answered some of the prince's questions. Eugene said he didn't want to lie to the prince, but he didn't want to be honest with the prince either. Eugene didn't hate the position of captain of the castle's army of mages, he was just reluctant. Prince says, with Eugene's current ability, he can gain a strong position anywhere. The prince realized, it seems that strength alone will not be able to keep Eugene and Arot, so he offers education. The prince started talking about Xienya the Wise, who had created 3 books for the witchcraft series. One is on display in a public place in Akryan, and the other 2 are kept in the treasure room of the royal palace. Instantly, Eugene and Sir Ro were stunned to hear that. Eugene remembers that the other 2 series belong to Xienya alone. Sir Ro instead asked the prince boldly, since when did the royal family have that book? Prince Honing asked the master of the Red Tower not to misunderstand, because all they had was a copy Madame Xienya had given them as a token of friendship. Not even they knew the location of Madame Xienya and the 2 original books. Eugene asks if Prince Honing will show the other series of witchcrafts that are stored in the royal family treasury. Prince answered doubtfully that now it sounds impossible, although it was true that he had won the Nobel King's heart, but witchcraft is the best textbook of all time. Even Prince can't do anything when it comes to witchcraft, but once he becomes king, the prince can has his powers to give Eugene access to witchcraft, but the prince couldn't show that to the Red Tower Master. So Prince Huan asks Eugene what he thinks about this, because this offer is really good. Meanwhile, Eugene is just silent with a serious face. He seemed to be thinking about this matter very carefully. Eugene thought it seemed he didn't have to think much longer. He had felt with all his body and soul just how extraordinary the witchcraft had been over the past 2 years. The first volume stored on Akryan alone was amazing, so the other 2 volumes must be even better than that, besides the possibility that the other volumes contain clues to Xienya's whereabouts. Perhaps Eugene can find traces that not even the Arot kingdom could. After that, Eugene said he wasn't sure at this time. Then Eugene would come to Arot after he ascended the throne. they could continue the discussion another time. If the opportunity arose, Huan Abram asks Eugene, if he still wants to be free and unfettered, then Prince will send a letter after successfully becoming king. Upon hearing that, Eugene thanked him. In a different place, Mel was reading a book and thought eternal whole and course had merged perfectly. Indeed, it wasn't complete, but structurally, she couldn't see any more mistakes. Even though the eternal whole wasn't as good as Sienna's circle flame method, far surpassed ordinary all magic, Mel closed the book, while praising it with amazing words. Then she told Eugene that from a normal point of view, the methods there were still incomplete, but why was Eugene still being so casual? Mel said that, it felt like, the thesis was a little selfish because maybe only Eugene could use the methods in it, so according to Eugene, the level of completeness is extraordinary. After that, Mel asked when Eugene would go to Arod, because his thesis was currently finished. Eugene replies, that it's likely he'll be leaving the day after tomorrow, as he still wants to rest. Besides that, the Red Tower will be holding a farewell party for him. Mel's face turned gloomy, when she heard what Eugene said. Mel said that Eugene could eat well there, then everyone would praise him. Eugene just smiled. He knew that Mel was jealous of him. Then he asked Mel, did she remember a few months ago, Eugene wanted to say something before going to Arod? Mel remembered that. Then Eugene continued that he wanted to check something before doing so. Could he tell someone and then have them share the information with? Now hearing the question, Mel immediately grunted and said, Eugene must be suspicious of her. Eugene acted so definitely, afraid that Mel would because thesis or information to the outside world. Eugene asked again, Mel ever do that? Mel answered, right away, of course not, even though a lot of people bothered her, when Eugene wasn't there. Even if the witchcraft was forcibly dismantled, it would be impossible to find that information. All the information and conversations of the witches that were cleaned after researching Sienna's relics were stored in the witchcraft deepest vault. This wasn't because Eugene was anything special, but it did function to respect the secrets of the magicians who entered Acrayan. So, as long as the witchcraft isn't completely destroyed, then Eugene's information will never leak out. Then Eugene said, if everything is that safe, it means that what will be said will not leak either. Mel confirmed and said, if Eugene could say anything, why should he be so afraid? I reincarnated. The spontaneous words made Mel couldn't believe it and said that it was nonsense. Then Eugene said again that he was reincarnated and he still had memories of his previous life. Mel said that it was just a joke, making her want to laugh out loud, but Eugene said again that his name used to be Hamel, or Hamel the Stupid as he was usually called. Mel had a hard time believing that, but if true, then there are several possibilities about Eugene. That makes sense. Eugene managed to understand the eternal whole even though he had only studied magic for 2 years. He also managed to imitate them with his keen senses and change them, according to his needs. But if he remembers his previous life and is a former colleague of Vermouth, the Great, there is a possibility that he really is Hamel the Stupid. According to Mel, Hamel the Stupid is quite a unique person. Sienna the Wise grew up in a forest of elves and studied the magic of the forest inhabitants. Mel and Brave is the son of the great chieftain of a tribe renowned for their fighting prowess in the brutal north, and it's the faithful as a saint as candidate treated by the cardinals of the Holy Empire Euros throughout their lives. And Vermouth the Great used to be a slave. Permit is included in the entourage of slaves who are made as an offering to the demons. He stole a demon sword to survive as hard as he could, and with that first swing of the sword, he managed to kill dozens of demons and black wizards who controlled the slave. When he led other slaves to escape Vermouth, he managed to kill hundreds of beasts. However, Vermouth is really strong. Mel continues that, Hamel the Stupid is the most unique person in the party. He doesn't start out as prominent as Vermouth. He also didn't have a special background, like the others. He only took up the sword after his village was attacked and destroyed by monsters. He also became a mercenary filled with hatred for monsters and demon kings. Despite his humble background in the hero party, he was able to grow strong enough to stand alongside the other members in just a few years. If it was true that Eugene was Hamel's reincarnation, but now, he understood why his growth rate was so extraordinary. Even though Hamel, who appeared in the fairy tale book, had a bad personality, His growth rate was extraordinary even among party heroes. Eugene countered that Hamel used to always want to surpass to Vermouth when traveling together because he wasn't good at magic, so he encountered familiar things, namely spear, swords, and even martial arts, so he can surpass Vermouth. However, he could never defeat Vermouth. Eugene didn't care if others called him a genius, all he wanted was to beat Vermouth once, but he couldn't do it until the end of his life. Then Mel asked why Eugene said that to her, even though Mel also didn't know where Sienna was. Eugene said that he wasn't looking for that information. He said that because after knowing Mel for 2 years, he felt that Mel was very similar to Sienna in both face and character. Mel confirmed moreover that she was based on Sienna's childhood. Then Eugene grabbed Mel's head and asks if he thinks Eugene has crossed the line. Mel replied that it was fine and that she would forgive him since he was seeing her partner. Eugene asked again, did Mel thinks Sienna was dead? Mel gets angry and says, it can't be happening. Eugene said, of course, that didn't happen, because Sienna couldn't have died without leaving any will, so, he promised to find Sienna, since Eugene believed his comrades were still alive somewhere in that world, and he will find it. Mel asked that Eugene really want to bring Sienna home. Eugene would have all reason to bring her home. Eugene found Sienna knowing she had ignored her familiars for 200 years. Mel was angry when Eugene insulted Sienna. Eugene said he had the right to do so because she had said so much nonsense and insults to Eugene 300 years ago. Mel asked Eugene to swear an oath before witchcraft. Eugene agreed. After that, they headed to the place where the witchcraft was. Eugene then swears in front of witchcraft and Lionheart's blood and name that he is telling the truth. Mel, who stood at the front, then said after Sienna many witches tried to dismantle her in witchcraft, but there was something they never knew about the information stored in the roots of witchcraft. What they talked about that day would be stored there and would never be revealed to anyone. What was about to be discussed was also unknown to the rest of Arod population. There were signs before Sienna disappeared a week before she left. Mel was accompanying her in Acrian room, when suddenly Sienna fell to the floor with a groan. When Mel asked the cause, Sienna said her familiar had died. It was said that someone had looted Hamel's tomb, and Sienna was very angry at that time. Eugene, who heard that, just found out that there is a tomb according to Mel, but Mel only found out about that fact after being told by Sienna that time. It wasn't long before Sienna disappeared. Mel had the conversation deep within the witchcraft, as it was something no one had ever told anyone. Before Sienna disappear, Mel didn't want to burden him, in case it wasn't something he wanted to talk about with other people, because Eugene is Hamel, therefore Eugene has the right to know. Eugene was still thinking about his grave. He never thought his body would disappear due to a belief curse. Because Alex's curse would destroy one's body and soul, that's generally true, but Hamel's soul is nothing and he can be reincarnated, which means his body is intact as well. Eugene confirmed that, and it seems Sienna had a hand in reincarnation. Eugene was out of there and walking home. On the way, he kept thinking about his grave, which might be currently stored somewhere, but where is it? Usually people will choose a location that is meaningful in their life as the location of their grave. There's no way the location is where Hamel died. Then he remembered something about his hometown. There Belzac suddenly appeared, which made Eugene immediately dislike him because he actually knew that Belzac had been following him, but he deliberately ignored it. Belzac says that he heard that Eugene will be leaving Arod in the next 2 days, to go to Luhar and Nahama. He's worried that since Luhar is in the north, close to Helmuth, Lionheart's influence will mean nothing there. They used to forbid demons from entering their territory, but the royal family changed the rules 5 years ago. There are many species of demons, Helmuth, and some of them disobeyed Master, that is the Demon King of Incarceration, but the Demon King of Incarceration isn't the only Demon King there. Then Eugene asked if that meant the Demon Kings wanted to start a war. Belzac rebutted because, according to him, the Demon King of Apocalypse did not like violence and he respected the Demon King of Incarceration. If the Demon King of Incarceration does start something, then that and King of Apocalypse will do the same. Eugene remembered that he had seen the Demon King Apocalypse once in his life, although Eugene wasn't sure what he saw at that time. In a vast plain a color seems to move very fast. No one has the idea to kill or fight it. If the Anis at that time is not able to win them, then they will definitely become madmen, Belzac then said. Just because the Demon King of Incarceration didn't do anything, and Demon King Apocalypse also kept silent, it didn't mean all the demons thought that way. Demons are violent. There have been many demons who have been disturbed by peace over the centuries. It does sound funny since it was Belzac who said that, but demons are not a peace-loving species. Then Eugene asked Belzac, is he sure they can do something to him, even though the demon kings are keeping the peace? Without ask that few demons did that. This didn't only apply to the demons who were under the Demon King of Incarceration. The demons who serve the Demon King of Apocalypse will do anything to end their king's silence, and there were also demon kings with high positions who wanted to become the new demon king because now there were only 2 demon kings. The original number was 5. They were currently 3 seats vacant, and Duchess of Ella really wanted those positions. They also couldn't possibly vote because they would definitely destroy the voting box if it didn't turn out the way they had hoped. Then Eugene thought about whether he could win against the Night Witch Queen Nor Sevilla. With the power he currently has, he really has the desire to go to Luhar, but it seems he can't do that yet. Eugene thanks Belzac for warning him. He will go to Nahama first and then go to Luhar. Belzac also said that Eugene had to be careful there because there was Amelia Merwin. She was a great black magician, even for tying the contract with the Demon King of Incarceration. The Demon King of Incarceration gave Belzac a lot of freedom, but Amelia got a lot of freedom, far greater than the Demon King of Incarceration. Then Belzac gave something to Eugene, that Eugene had to give when he met Amelia. If he handed it over, no matter what she had done to him, she would not be able to hurt Eugene. Eugene that opened the envelope. He was surprised to see the contents inside the envelope inside were empty. Belzac said that if the contents were not important, the most important thing was the letter from him that Eugene would bring later. Then Bilisk that gives the letter to Eugene and says that he can do nothing about the danger that will come to him in the Nahama, but at least Bounce, that can handle Amelia Marvin temper. If Eugene insisted on going to Nahama, Belzac asked to take it with him. Eugene then asked what exactly Belzac asked of him. Belzac replied, indeed, he could not let go of the bad prejudice about dark magicians, but he asked for help to receive the goodwill from him. Seeing this, Eugene felt suspicious, especially since the Black Tower Master was being so friendly towards him. It was very worried. Belzac asks, you did not to misunderstand him, he just wants to build a close relationship with Human, according to him. Besides, he was not the only one who behaved like that. There were many other people who did the same thing. Eugene said that he would gratefully accept the gift. He was very grateful for the help from the Belzac. He feels like he wants to invite Belzac to his farewell party tomorrow, but doesn't really come tomorrow. Eugene said that just now. He was just trying to speak his heart out. Eugene thinks human feelings are unique and he wants to invite Belzac, but at the same time, if Belzac didn't comes to his farewell party tomorrow, instead of feeling happy, he will really hate Belzac. Belzac said that he would come tomorrow. Hearing that, Eugene thanked him, amazed at his generosity. After that, Eugene said goodbye and walked away from there. Belzac didn't say anything at all. The next day, Eugene's farewell party was held in. Many people who came there were invited by Eugene, including the Blue Tower Master. The two of them chatted, including discussing why some Tower Masters were not invited by Eugene. Eugene said the Blue Tower Master must know the reason. Then the Blue Tower Master replied that their attitude was like that because they knew that Eugene was very talented. Moreover, in the past the Blue Tower Master wanted to recruit Eugene, but he respected the Red Tower Master who had made him an apprentice. He had expected it to, but Eugene really did invite Belzac there. Eugene then says if he invites him maybe the other masters won't like it. Then he asked who the Black Tower Master really was. He used to be a student in the Blue Tower and he was in the same class as the Blue Tower Master was. a very extraordinary magician, but he suddenly came out of the Blue Tower and went to Vermouth. The reason was that he wanted to expand his knowledge of magic. At that time the master was weaker than Belzac, but the master was able to become a Blue Tower master, thanks to his departure, and 10 years later, Belzac has become a black magician after returning from Helmet. He then moved to the Black Tower and was appointed Black Tower master, thanks to the support of other black magicians. Otherwise Belzac should be the greatest tower master in the history of the Blue Tower, but apparently that wasn't enough for him. How powerful a human's magic would be limited, and it would be impossible to surpass a demon king. The master then says that he heard that Eugene is going to MANHUA. The master says, the desert is not a peaceful land, this is not very good advice, so go ahead if Eugene will ignore it, but if he still wants to go to MANHUA, hide the fact that he is a Lionheart. Currently, the situation there is heating up. Assassin of MANHUA, which usually moves in the darkest now, starting to operate openly. If they dared to find out, the Lionheart family of the Keel Empire, and it would hurt to be on guard. Eugene thanks him and says, he'll keep that in mind. Then after Eugene went to MANHUA, he saw a vast desert. Then he thought that the Cape of Darkness looked very conspicuous in such a desert, but luckily they came that he had the function of transformation magic, and the robe also resonates with the senses of its owner, so that he can regulate the external and internal temperature of the body. The cloak ensured that the wearer was comfortable in the scorching heat. The magic map he got from the library and coordinates locked to his current footing location. It will tell Eugene's current location. Now, Eugene is on the west end of MANHUA. If he continues to go north from there, then he will reach Turath. At first he wanted to find his grave first and visit his hometown, which is located on the border of Turath. The last 300-year MANHUA desert is getting wider little by little. The unnatural sandstorm is slowly devouring all the surrounding regions. That's why Hamel's hometown, which is located on the border of Turath, has become part of the desert. Turath is a small country. They had no other choice but to leave the territory that had turned into a desert due to artificial sandstorms mages. After that, at the area that turned into a desert will become part of the MANHUA area. 300 years ago the demon kings arose, which caused the demons to advance in the monstrous to attack everything. MANHUA tried to steal the opportunity to invade Keel Empire, but they failed because in the end Vermouth threat to help Keel. Eugene thought that he hated the country even in his previous life. Indeed, it has been 300 years, but his hatred towards them is still the same. Then he intended to search his own grave and ask Sienya, Anis, Moran, please wait a little longer, for I would find them all for sure. Well, that's the end of season 1. We thank you very much for watching.